It's complicated. Holy crap. Weed is complicated. You have to know a tiny little bit about where I'm coming from on this, because I think that the old saying, where you stand on an issue often depends on where you sit at night, is very applicable here. So just a tiny little bit about me, and then we are going to do, we're at 7:20? What time do we start, 7:15?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to drink from a fire hose in a second. Listen, I am raising 3 kids in the weed capital of the world. And that, 7:30, great. And that influences and affects the way that I see things. It does. A couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I was at a cannabis summit in Northern California. And I said I was from the weed capital of America. And a guy who owned a big grow operation in the back said, yeah, give us a minute. And it's okay, maybe Humboldt will catch up again to Colorado. But for now, yeah, we kind of got you guys beat. We went first, and so we have a pretty unique perspective on this, and I've been trying to pay really close attention. Something else that I know impacts us is my own recovery. I got sober not too far from here, actually, on June 15th of 1996, and by the grace of God, I haven't found it necessary to put anything into my body that changes my mood since then. And what I found in working with young folks in recovery is this really has changed the conversation. We got this secret society, right? And we help each other out, sponsor people, we do that kind of thing. And there's always been this idea of marijuana maintenance. I'll get sober from that, but I'm not really going to get sober from all of that. What we come to learn a little bit maybe later on in our recovery is it's not so much about cutting one particular thing out of our life as it is what have we been avoiding the conversation about, and what have we been avoiding actually sitting down and getting into. And this has made it a little more difficult for me with some of those guys because it's so prolific. And there's such an accepted idea out there, like there's this it's just weed thing. And I've been on a little crusade against that lately because I've seen people getting heat being like not as good an addict when they go into treatment for this, and people, it's just weed. Well, you've met 11 out of the 11 diagnostic criteria for substance use disorder. I'd say you got this thing pretty good. But it's changed the way we work in the beginning of things. That was just a nonprofit I was involved in for a long time, and that's reversed 2012 to 2017. 2007 to 2012. Then I was at the University of Colorado Hospital for 5 years when we went recreational. So I was inside of the chemical dependency treatment program there when Colorado voted, and then when we actually opened up retail stores. So kind of had a front row seat at a big safety net facility in urban Denver, which was a really neat perspective. During that time, I wrote a book, and I wrote that book with no small amount of assistance from Dad. He reviewed every chapter. He's probably 2 master's degrees and covered everything. Basically, when I couldn't spell something close enough for spell check to get it, Dad would figure it out for me. He'd say, maybe you should say the sentence this way so you don't sound like a 10-year-old. And I wrote a book, and then I gave a TED Talk in 2017 last year about this that's now 1.5 million people have seen it. And so that one's getting kind of cool. I spent all my time consulting since I left the hospital inside of treatment for labor. I work for a big labor union, helping them vet appropriate treatment programs. But the majority of my time is spent in athletic circles. So professional and collegiate athletics, both helping them develop policies that are a little bit more geared towards helping people who have substance use disorder and mental health issues, a little less punitive maybe, but also performance issues around this drug and other drugs. And then a couple of states. I spend time working with a couple of states, and now I'm helping Canada to hopefully do this smarter than Colorado did. Listen, it's complicated. So let's start the conversation about it being complicated with this slide. I sit on the board of directors for something called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And when SAM started in 2017, it had nothing to do with being the anti-group. SAM is totally the anti-group now. They're the ones who fund the no campaigns. They're the ones who are on the ground saying no. But when Sam started, it wasn't about that. When Kevin Sabet and Patrick Kennedy called and said, this is what we're thinking about doing, I loved it because I loved these 4 pillars that they stood for. So listen, I'm not the politicking guy. There's plenty of politicking guys who are involved in SAM, and they're doing great work. I'm happy for them, but I still sit on the board because I believe in these things. And these things start to illustrate how complicated it is. So let's run through them real quickly. SAM exists to inform public policy with the science of today's marijuana. If we were talking about marijuana from years past, for as lovely as it is to be in eastern Pennsylvania in the middle of a blizzard, I wouldn't be here right now. I would be back home with my family. I don't have an interest in having a conversation about, pardon me, the historical makeup of the plant, function of the plant, the ridiculousness of a lot of the laws that governed the way that we interact with this plant from back in the 30s. I don't have an interest in talking about marijuana from years past, because that's irrelevant in my mind to today's conversation. Understanding the science of today's marijuana is something, oh buddy, people miss it. Even when I sit down with clinicians who are on the front line in Colorado, a lot of them have missed it. Because it's one, it's changing so rapidly, and then two, there's so much hype around it that unless you've figured out a way to cut through the nonsense and to try and be as truly objective as you can as learning about it, it's a very difficult conversation to get. SAM also exists to discuss reducing unintended consequences of marijuana policy. There's just some really terrible policy out there. People who get in trouble for something silly that they did, and then it dramatically affects their lives negatively for the rest of their life. I'm not for that. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the work that I do inside of the athletic world hopefully is reducing that. There's still some places who need to get a little bit more hip to the times, I don't know, like Texas and stuff. SAM exists to prevent the establishment of big marijuana. So, like, we didn't do it. We need to change that from prevent the establishment of to hold the feet to the fire of. Fairly conservatively, we taxed the sale, in North America, we taxed the sale of about $9.8 billion worth of weed last year in 2017. We'll break $12 billion this year in all likelihood. Like, that's a lot of weed, okay? It's almost 3 times what we taxed in the sale of milk. Right, 3.8. We are consuming a ton of weed in this country. And if we miss the economic drivers behind it, I think we miss some of the crucial part of this conversation. If we think, and I'm sure it still exists in lots of places around the country, even in Pennsylvania, because the industry here is so young and it's in its fledgling stages. But for us in Colorado, this idea of somebody being like, oh shucks, I just own that little dispensary out there on the, Integrity Farms. If anybody watches South Park, there's a really great Integrity Farms thing going on. Is ridiculous. It doesn't exist anymore. You've had the Monsantos and the Walmarts come in and take over the cute little mom and pop, and the people who really cared about this thing and were a part of their communities. Come on, man, this is what we do in this country. Big money takes over passion all the time. And that is what has happened. And so if we're willing to have a little bit more honest look at that part of it, I think we could have a much better conversation about this thing. Because to think that big marijuana is not a thing is to allow a profiteering industry to have free rein and to not have the same kind of checks and balances that we hold over everything else. SAM also exists to promote research on medical marijuana and to produce pharmacy-attainable medications. Thank God the feds finally got out of the way and let Epidiolex gave it FDA approval, and now we've got that we have now 3 medications that are cannabis-based that are good. You ready for this? Like you hawks who came in here ready for somebody to bash marijuana until the sun came up, and I'm gonna give you some bad news. Like there's medicine in the plant, like period. We know for sure, there's an anticonvulsant, there's anti-inflammatory. Topical anti-inflammatory is a whole lot better than ingested because ibuprofen works better than that. There's some really amazing stuff for people with MS, particularly late stage MS and relaxing muscles and tics. And a couple other things are promising. There is medicine inside of this plant. And we would have been a whole lot better off from the beginning to have admitted that and had honest conversations about it. Now, with that said, you don't smoke medicine. Ever, period, stop, end of story. Like, never, ever, ever in the history of ever has it been like, you know what we should do? We should dry that shit out, light that shit up, and inhale that shit. That's the best way to get it into our bodies. No, that's not what you do. You isolate the components of, particularly the pharmacy attainable pieces, and you do it in a regulated manner. Not somebody telling you, this one fixes that, this one fixes that, this is good for that. You have to be very, very careful with medicine by popular vote. So we know that there's medicine here, but we also know that there's a whole lot of hyperbole here and a whole lot of profiteering here. And we need to be careful with what we call medicine. So look, there's a little bit of the it's complicated part. This part is not complicated. The true scientific stuff that we're going to cite tonight is not complicated. Real science is, you ready for this? It's simple. You'll win this on Jeopardy if you ever get asked the question. Real science is journal published, peer reviewed. The thing that your nephew read on HuffPost or that like came up from BuzzFeed or and surveys aren't science and polls aren't science and something that somebody says they did a big long scientific study on but hasn't been reviewed by peers or published in a journal doesn't count. So every single thing inside of this tonight is journal published and peer reviewed. There's a full list of citations at the end appropriate for continuing medical education. And Kim will make sure anybody wants it. I draw heavily on these. We have some wonderful demographic data that's come from the Colorado Health Institute lately. I'm going to have to start to fly a little bit to get through this, so excuse me for skipping through some of these things. Got to do something. We have to start this. I have to figure out a new way to start this thing because I ask everybody to do something that's almost impossible at the beginning. I'm going to ask you to do something that is nearly impossible. I'm going to ask you to step away from what your construct of marijuana is. So feel free to play along if you want, if you don't find it. But when I close my eyes and if somebody says weed, the thing that I think of first off is the cover of that Dre album from when he was still a rapper, The Chronic. I'm pretty sure you threw it out when you heard me listening to it. I knew you threw the Cherry Pie single out one day when you heard me listening to it. I see the Cypress Hill shirt that I owned that said legalize it on the bottom with the leaf on the front of it. I see a green leafy plant. I see Cheech and Chong after the whole false advertising thing with a joint this big. I see Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and it's not just that one scene, the whole thing. I see Fast Times, and I see Dazed and Confused, and I see Friday. I see a plant. And what we're talking about today, man, I hope you can read this. It said this is the new school cannabis. It's not what you've smoked in the 70s. Let me say something crazy and something that actually frustrates people sometime, and then give me the next 10 minutes to prove it to you. Here's a big blanket statement, and you got to give me a couple minutes to prove it. Unless you have purchased and consumed a commercial product, THC product, in the last 3 years or so, you don't know what you're talking about. You are operating under a construct of what this is that is so antiquated that it is irrelevant. And for us to believe that we know what we're talking about because we, listened to Joe Walsh and got a little bit high, or Cypress Hill or Dr. Dre, and we haven't consumed something that's come about in the last 3 years, we're doing a disservice to the people who we're trying to have that conversation with, I believe. Because we're not talking about the cannabis of the 70s, we're talking about THC. So there's 200 and some chemicals inside of the plant before you light it on fire. 500 and some after you light it on fire. There's 2 of them that really, 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 really matter. CBD, why are we so concerned with CBD? Anybody? Medicinal. It's where the medicine is. It's isolated and synthesized, oh boy, especially synthesized, like it's where the medicine is. It does something else kind of cool we'll talk about in a minute. Well, and how about THC? Why are we concerned with that? Yeah. It is the, like capital letters underlined, psychoactive component inside of cannabis. THC is the part of the plant that is the drug. All right, THC is what gets you high. You got a plant with a drug inside of it, and that's the drug. And I love the honesty of this particular dispensary. They chased me out of the parking lot as I was taking the picture, because it's not like nature's healing, whatever. It's just like, look, we sell THC. It's what we do. What do you want? We got it. We got it. You want THC? We got THC. You remember that movie, Thank You for Smoking? There's a point in it where the protagonist is having a conversation with an executive from a cigarette company, and the executive says, man, we don't sell cigarettes. We sell nicotine delivery systems. Shift, shift, shift. I'm not talking about a plant. I'm talking about THC and THC delivery systems. In fact, I think it's incredibly important that we begin to change our vernacular around it a little bit. You'll see me move away from saying things like cannabis now, unless I'm actually talking about the plant. And I'll be referring to it to the market as THC for the rest of the time, because what we did in Colorado was built a dedicated THC market. There's absolutely CBD available, and absolutely lower percentages, but there ain't a ton of money in it. It's like people will ask me all the time, well, can't you get CBD? Well, of course you can get CBD. There's real medicine there. But like you can totally buy decaf at Starbucks. I don't really know the last time I did it, but like, sure, it's out there. But the market is for the THC. So understand this. We're going to go a tiny bit 201 for you guys tonight because you were so gracious to come out again. Here's THC. Here's CBD. This is the kind of data set we dream about. Beautiful, perfect data set. Same place, same people, same everything. 1960, 2011. This teaches us several things. The first thing that it teaches us is that the understanding that we have of what the historical plant, cannabis, hemp, etc., our understanding of that plant historically was spot on as we started to measure it. And that is that, you ready? So one or two of us have heard that marijuana is natural, right? What is natural, what naturally occurs inside of this plant is less than 0.5% of THC, probably 0.2 to 0.5. Unless you were in like Indonesia or somewhere subtropical where they had like some baller bud, 150 years ago, maybe you get 2%. You have some for real stuff, was maybe that. And what we see as we start to measure it in 1960 is we're barely touching. This is done in a uniform way. We're barely touching that. And then finally in the 80s, these guys started to listen to the people at Normal who were screaming at them outside of the door saying, there's medicine, there's medicine. And they actually started to test for CBD. So what we see here over the course of these 50 years is we go from the naturally occurring amount of THC inside of this product to where we were in 2011 when the federal government shut this whole program down. But the important thing we see, and this is what most people miss, and this is what you guys will know now, you can come back to a great retort to most arguments, that it's not so much about the THC. So we actually get really bent out of shape about high THC products. It's not so much about how high the THC is as it is about the delta between the two. Because what naturally occurs inside of cannabis is not just that less than 0.5% THC, it is a 1-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD. It's God's little gift. This is cool. This is something that makes me get excited about and super respectful of this plant, especially historical context of this plant. It's one of 50 essential herbs inside our traditional Chinese medicine. We just found it in more tombs in Asia. We found it in tombs in Africa. Mankind has interacted with cannabis forever, and the plant that God gave us is a 1-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD. And the reason why that matters is that CBD neutralizes the psychoactive component that is THC. At a 1-to-1 ratio, you cannot get high. I don't care if you got 10% and 10%. You'll feel a little weird from smoke inhalation. Right, interesting, cool. But what do? Man, there's nothing we can't mess up. in this country. There's nothing that we won't figure out a way to screw up. We got more THC, kept the CBD about the same. Why? Why did we increase the THC? Yeah, because we wanted to get high. Like, if you guys all, I don't know when you graduated college, Dad, but if y'all would have chilled out a little bit back then, maybe we wouldn't have gone to hydroponic, inverted hydroponic, cloning, an asexualized plant, indoor growth, super accelerated growth patterns. And then the real thing was we were just kind of mixing strains together to make them stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. We, over the course of 50 years, made our weed stronger. Check this out. 50 years, increments of 2.5. 50 years, 2.5. 6 years, increments of 5 in my home state. Let's put it together. Blue is Colorado. Green is when we stop measuring nationally. This is what most people know and want to talk about. You think you know weed? Unless you have purchased and consumed a product that was sold commercially in the last 3 or so years, your construct of cannabis is so antiquated that it is irrelevant. Simple. Because this was not doing the same stuff that this is. What we see associated with this is things that you would never have imagined here. Yet the historic arguments persist. What we want to do is talk about this substance and sell and consume that substance is not fair. It's not appropriate. Listen, I'm a grown-up, and there's a lot of grown-ups out there. You can do whatever you're going to do. Don't drive. That's my thing. If you got a fully myelinated frontal lobe, don't drive. I'm not going to tell anybody how to live. I'm certainly not going to throw my agenda on everybody else's life. But I will tell you that if you were making decisions on what you think this drug is from interaction back here, this plant was back here, about this, you're not operating with a full amount of information. And I see it as my job to make sure people got a full amount of information. Okay. We've gone from good gardening to good chemistry. Good God. Like, we got to be careful here. One of the first questions that I get asked when I travel or do anything is, Ben, do you really believe that marijuana is addictive? And there's absolutely, it's not a belief system. I like to answer it by saying, I believe marijuana is addictive in the same way that I believe Wyoming lies directly north of Colorado. I believe that. I use, like anybody else in this world who's paying attention to it, okay, watch this. Watch. Those of you, who else have prevention or treatment in here? A couple of you? Watch how far we have come in this country. You guys just fill in the blank, throw the word out, say whatever comes to mind at the end of this. Addiction is a disease. You cannot diagnose a disease by walking around and seeing what's on somebody's playlist, what their ethnicity is, what car they drove up in, what kind of shirt they're wearing, how many times they've watched Friday. The only way you can do it is with objective diagnostic criteria. There are 11 set forth in the DSM. If one meets 2 or 3, you have a substance use disorder that's classified as mild, 4 or 5 moderate, 6 or more severe. Using those criteria, given 2002 data, roughly 9% of all adults, adult being someone with a myelinated frontal lobe, a fully developed frontal lobe, which is mid-20s, 26 for guys, 23 or so for women. Someone with a fully myelinated frontal lobe, about 9% of you will become addicted to cannabis if you're exposed to it. The reason why that doesn't matter even a little bit is because that's the portion of the population that's genetically predisposed anyway. That if all of us woke up tomorrow on a desert island, 10% of you would be doing really weird stuff with like coconut leaves and stuff with me in the corner of the island, because we needed that dopamine spike. Now it gets interesting when you look at a pre-myelinated brain, adolescent, which again, under mid-20s, 17%, and it gets really interesting when you look at data from 2011. A variation of 100%, let's dissect it just a little bit. If I could tell the entire world one thing, it would be this. That's what we were talking about a little bit yesterday. That the DSM, the manual that we use to give the diagnostic information for all mental health disorders, for the first time ever a year and a half ago included diagnostic criteria for cannabis withdrawal. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome, PAWS, with accompanying ICD-9 codes from cannabis. Physical dependence on THC. So, back here? Nope, not so much. Remember here, you can get a psychological dependence. You can do it. Yep, back here, true. Here, completely and totally different, and absolutely, I was part of the very first wave that watched all of this happen real time. You go from seeing this never to seeing this 600, 700, 800 times a month. Things have changed. They've dramatically changed because it's a different substance. So let's talk about the why. Here's my home. That's Starbucks, that's McDonald's, that's weed. Laugh it up, Pennsylvania. See what your freaking governor does here. 1014. Add 376 from 2017. Bring us about here, because in 2017 we added 376. Let's do a little econ. Simple, simple, simple stuff. How can Colorado support this amount of retail? It's very easy. There is a consumer base. It's very, very easy. We can support that growth and that amount of retail because there's a consumer growth. How does that growth continue at that rate? Again, super duper simple. You increase the consumer base. Two ways to do it. Convert current users to more frequent users, capture new users. There's no other way. We have to ask ourselves, why does the old 80-20 rule matter in this situation? The 80-20 rule that says that 80% of the booze in this country is consumed by roughly 20% of the consumers. That the alcohol industry could care about my wife and her 4 or 5 margaritas a year. There's the guy who was drinking Mad Dog 2020 at 12 years old, who they really liked. Sorry about that again, but I put these people through a rough time. In Colorado, 84% of the THC is being consumed by 20% of the consumers. Who are those people? Disproportionately young, under 26. Problemed users. They are problemed users like anything. This industry is going to build what they got on the backs of the least fortunate. Those of us with a substance use disorder, those of us with mental health disorders, those of us who are more challenged, those of us who are economically disenfranchised, they will be the 20% consuming 84%. In Colorado, you are twice as likely to consume marijuana daily if you earn under $25,000 a year than if you earn over 50. The problemed users. Let us build the problemed users. I'm going to teach you something new right now. I hope. Those of you in prevention and treatment, you already know this. You want to build a problemed user for THC? There's 3 factors. There's really 4, but we have no control over genetic susceptibility and genetic predisposition. The 3, age of onset, frequency of use, and THC potency. If we're growing at this rate, and if we got to build these people, here's a quick tour of Colorado. Age of onset, that's Cookie Monster on the side of a dispensary with a plate full of dope. They got a cease and desist from Sesame Street. That's Keef Cat and Buddhafinger and Chrome Crunch. These guys got a lawsuit from Hershey's. This is the open house dates that my kids brought home. My daughter, when she went from 8th grade to 9th grade last year, my son went from 6th grade to 7th grade, so they each got these in school. This is the Boulder Daily Camera. It's not some fringe weirdo newspaper, and it's got all the open houses and like Lyons Middle School, they have a better marching, cheer, whatever. So they went to pick which ones they were because they were given these in school. My daughter comes up 15 minutes later, she goes, "Dad, check it out. There's a half-page full-color ad for a dispensary in page 1 of that called Starbuds." And she goes, "First I thought it was for Starbucks, but then I realized it was for weed." I thought, oh, somebody ought to give that marketing guy a bonus because he did it. He got that message in front of every single kid in my county, and he branded it to something that they know and love anyway. age of onset. I have to be a little judicious with time here. Age of onset. Pooh Bear dabbing doesn't turn me on. Any of you relatively responsible adults out there, have you downloaded the Kushmoji from the iTunes store yet? Yeah, me either. 20% off move-in special at CU Boulder. Who moves in, man? Freshman and sophomore. How many 21-year-old freshmen and sophomore are there out there? Spring break. 20% off with your student ID. Santa Claus with a bag full of dope. A back-to-school special with a half-naked chick. Here, there's 20% off with your student ID. There's Fred Flintstone smoking a dab between two half-naked chicks. Frequency of use. Smoke weed every day. Listen, man, I don't care how developed your frontal lobe is. Don't smoke weed every day. This leads to physical, changes in the physical structure of your brain. Loss of gray matter, white matter, connective tissue, and we're actually starting to see a lot more long-term residual stuff too. Don't. If you want to have fun. It would be the same thing. Like if somebody was getting drunk daily, you'd be like, okay, hang on, time out. Don't smoke weed every day, unless you're these guys who own 20 dispensaries. Then it makes sense. Then we thought, don't forget to dabble daily. I'll teach you about dabs in just a second. We make it easier for you to consume. We'll pre-roll them. Shoot, we'll make a gas station where you can pull up, get your gas pump for you, and get somebody to bring your dope out. That came in the value pack to my house. It's $1,000 pound. Who needs a pound of this weed to consume? $1 a joint when I show you my ski pass. Or bring in your ski pass and get it for $8. Here, can I translate elevate your adventure and go as high as you can? Can I translate that for you? Get really, really high and go skiing. Frequent, all the time. I got a buddy in Wyoming whose 13-year-old daughter and wife were struck by a snowboard impaired, THC impaired snowboarder, only THC. His wife was in the ICU for like 2 months and his daughter died. Like skiing stone ain't funny, man. But look, Potency. Bud tenders are trained to have their most potent products at the ready when asked for a suggestion. Why? Age of onset, frequency of use, and potency. And here's the messaging at home that I have to contend with. Is I'm talking to young people and saying, okay, listen, maybe this is for older folks as I've moved into more of a harm reduction mode. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you need to be more careful. Whatever, old man. Teddy bear riding the roster rocket over the Flatiron says, stay high, Boulder. It's difficult to I want to teach you guys like 2 things quick in the next 10 minutes before our questions, and I'm not going to have time to get to the mental health issues. What we're seeing, but before I go into these 2, because I'm going to go super duper quick through them, what you're going to, 10 or 15 years from now, we are going to be having a conversation in which the next generation is going to say, can you believe there was a time when they didn't see the link between psychosis, other mental health issues, and THC? In the same way that my generation says to you guys, sorry, I keep hitting this thing. In the same way my generation is like, I can't believe there was a time when you guys didn't know the link between tobacco and cancer. Unbelievable. That's a foot race between the knowledge and the industry. But what's happening with it from the mental health side, listen, man, at a 2, 3, 4% counterbalance with some THC in it, we didn't have these problems. That movie Reefer Madness was insane. They made it because the government wanted to do bad things to Black, Hispanic, and Asian people. The movie was nuts. Today, though, we see true psychosis associated with this, for real. But the problem is, because people freaked out before when they didn't have any business doing that, now nobody's taking it as seriously as they should outside of the medical world. Boy, my dance card is full. I could do 3 of these a week if I felt like being away from home that much. And the majority of them are for physicians. You're like, holy crap, what do we do? All this that we're seeing, how do we handle this? We're going to talk about concentrates and edibles real quick. 16%. In our discussion of concentrates, we begin with this number because 16% is the highest potency cannabis we have ever studied. Lancet Journal, February 2015, Volume 2, Number 3, The Effects of High-Potency Cannabis on Psychosis. There's a new study that will get the first report from Hoffner et al., looking at roughly 80% out of UCH this year. But until then, humankind's collective knowledge of high-potency cannabis ends here, 16%. So when we talk about the issues associated with high potency, that's what we're using as the benchmark. With this number, what Lancet taught us was a daily use, which is 5 times a week, saw an increase in psychosis 5-fold, multiplier of 5. Weekend use, which was twice a week, saw an increase 3-fold, and 1/4 of all the psychosis in the sample group was causal. Like isolated for sure causal. There's a whole question, causation, correlation. You know, did this start the fire or was it just gas on the fire? It's a really good question with marijuana because a lot of the times there's pre-existing conditions and who knows what's going on. It could be a million different things. But what we're starting to find is that there's actual causal with this high potency stuff. So, concentrates. What you're gonna see, who's familiar? What you see sometimes, I think, is like, it's so intense for some people that they're like, oh, that can't be a thing. So we rationalize, we find a way to explain it. We say that's not really what people are consuming. In 2014, the word concentrate shows up nowhere in the annual economic report about weed in Colorado, even though we were selling it. 2015, once, when we say there's contaminants, same thing in 2016. 2017's report, they say, oh, we taxed the sale, above ground sale, we taxed the sale of 27,890 pounds of concentrates in Colorado. 4.5 million doses. If you can't read this, it's the concentrate education campaign by this dispensary. It says, cannabis concentrates are potent. Start by consuming a small dose about half the size of a pinhead or less. We sold 28,000 pounds of that last year, taxed the sale of 28,000 pounds. So it's probably 40% of what we actually did in the state. This is not fringe use. I've been on the front lines of this since 2007 in Colorado. I've been in like the formal hospital side front lines of this since before and through. This is not what people are graduating to. This is what they are initiating on. And the idea that, well, they'll just consume less, that's just not how tolerance for THC works. You go throw this on YouTube tonight, you watch people consuming 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 grams. There's a 10-gram challenge with a bunch of guys this is not fringe use. Colorado, last year, in 2017, sold more of this by dollar amount than the plant. Sink in for a minute. In Colorado, we sold more of this, which I'm about to show you what it is, than the plant. I'm not talking fringe use. Mainstream market. So here's what it is. This is great. Crack is back. Crack is whack. Crack kills. Say no to crack. Sound familiar? Well, kids, I'm here to tell you that not all crack is bad. Some crack is actually really, really good. We're talking about crack weed. That's what we call it, for real. 99.99% THC. Where does our collective knowledge end? Yes, the rest is anecdotal. You consume these things in a vaporizer with a ceramic tip because 700 degrees or so is ideal for the rock form of them. You consume it with a aromatherapy kit that you plug into the wall because it gets it hot quicker. You consume it on in a glass pipe because it's rock form. You consume it in these little pocket e-nail vaporizers. I'm going to skip the videos because of time, but I'd like to encourage you all to go and watch some of these things. The making of concentrates are really simple. The concept is really simple. It's not hash like what you're used to. What you do is you take an organic material in a closed area and you force a solvent through it. So you take weed, shake what's trimmed off of the buds. You force a solvent through it, and then what you have at the bottom is the solvent plus THC. And then you refine and you do different things to it, but that's how you make a concentrate. Butane was how we all started. butane was really effective at stripping THC out of it. So you start with butane, propane's effective, Everclear is effective, cold water is actually really effective. Now gravity is also a great way to do this. Compression is, so again, to give you an idea of the scope of this and how much it's changed recently, this is purchasable for home use out of Boulder now. This isn't like for the corporate producer. This is a closed loop extraction system that I can buy in my house because check here, this one's more of a compression gravity. Mine your own gold. So the value that we're talking about here just speaks for itself. Again, I hope that some of you will put this stuff into YouTube tonight and watch people consuming concentrates because it's pretty profound. This one's interesting. I like to show this one because he's a large man. He's not a small guy. And he samples this inside of the store. And again, most of these videos are sort of showing different things associated with, it doesn't manifest how you're typically used to weed manifesting. It manifests differently. Like these concentrates, when you hit them for the first time, watch this guy. Kill a Friend Day on YouTube, Kill a Friend Day. And what he does is he gives dedicated marijuana users their first concentrate hit, and then he films it. What we are doing is trying to have relevant conversations with people and teach them how to navigate the world and the streets, telling them about our experience learning how to drive in a hand-crank Model T going 30 miles an hour downhill. And they're like, oh, I don't understand you. And we're like, why don't you understand me? Because this is their world and that's ours. Because unless you've consumed something you purchased commercially in the last 3 years, you're talking about something back there. And they're talking about this because to them today, weed looks fundamentally different. To me, you see that beautiful nug right there? When I went down to the 203 and I bought a dub sack, if I had one of these inside of it, I was thrilled because that was weed to me. Today is butter, it's wax, it's shatter. This is weed. The technical definition, every salt, derivative, extract of, and concentrate from the cannabis plant. The practical application for the people who are the young folks, especially who are consuming today, that's weed. This is weed, and they believe this stuff, that it's organic, gluten-free, cage-free marijuana, because to them, that's weed. And so is this. I had to call a sponsee and ask him what this was when I saw it for the first time. How about this? See, that's weed. Water and ice osmosis. That's marijuana. Yeah, right. No, it's not. It's not. No, it is. Practically speaking. And this, you heard it here first. A year from now, when everybody's talking about this one, you heard it here first. THCA. This is what it's all about. These are all the specials in Colorado. These are front and center. I go to dispensaries all the time. These are front and center in all of the dispensaries. These are what the coupons are for. This is what everybody's pushing. THCA, pure. If we have more time, I'd actually break down the chemistry of what it is here. But it is, can you imagine, it's a distillate. Distillate's the word. Can you imagine the level of acumen you have to take a green organic material and turn it into that? No, it's weed. That's weed. This is marijuana today. And we know it's not. The narrative still exists that it's natural. Experts only. Now, we're going to make you that person quick. In the Finest Buds Guide in Westward this year, where it lists all the strains and all the different places they're selling them, we started, this came up this year with bubble hash, wax, shatter, crystalline, sauce, live resin. Shatter for stronger and much more potent high. Shatter's the way to go. It's more pure due to the filtrations of the product, subsequently removing many of the terpenes. Wax is a product using butane, a liquid gas, as a solvent to extract the main cannabinoids and terpenes. Live resin, the cannabis plants are immediately flash frozen after being harvested. Sauce is a full spectrum extract. Caviar is cannabis flour dipped in hash oil, dried for a few hours, and sprinkled or rolled in keef. Distillates. Create one of the more pure cannabis products on the market, distilling cannabinoids down to the molecular level and delivering higher THC content. This is it. It's molecular level separation of delta-9 THC, not even the whole THC molecule, the delta-9 THC. Y'all know Snoop Dogg sells weed? Nope. Willie sells weed. And if Willie Nelson moves you to get high, I don't really give a crap what you do. If Snoop Dogg moves you to get high, though, I actually do care, because that's a different generation. It's the younger people. Snoop sells concentrates because he's smart. He's a good businessman. 7/10 is oil upside down. July 10th is the new day. Stop saying 420. You sound old. Say 7/10 and people will be like, huh? Yeah, crap. What do they know? Going back to nature, don't forget your natural cannabis. We are your concentrate headquarters. The narrative still exists that this is natural. It is not. It's not. And until we have a much better idea of what these are doing to people's brains and bodies, you ready for this? Giants, like, they don't belong in the world. Period. The only place they belong in is in the portfolio of somebody who's trying to get paid off of this substance. They don't belong being consumed until we have a much better idea of what they're doing inside of brains and bodies. However, we sold more of these in Colorado than the flower. Why? That's where the money's at. 80-20. Look, this came out in Sensi magazine last month. It's Normal's magazine that they publish now. Do you even dab, bruh? Oh yeah, all day, every day. Well, good, here we can get that. Occasionally, I'd say I dabble in it. No, honestly, it looks like you're smoking crack. Oh, you don't? No, okay. Do you consume any kind of marijuana at all? No, well then you should try vaping, because here's what, if you don't consume now, try vaping, and then we're gonna move you, ultimately, down to concentrate consumption. Well, yeah, I do. Okay, let's get you, how do we get you down to concentrate consumption? First one's on me. I heard that one before. Vaporizers. You need to know one thing: no smoke, no smell, no mess. You need to know that they come in, like this was funny, CBS in Denver ran this thing and said, vaping's easy to hide. These kids and their nicotine vaping, and they showed that picture, and I was like, hold up, that's a PAX. So it's a THC-specific vaporizer, and anything that's even nicotine-specific, go on YouTube, in 30 seconds you can learn how to take a joule and make it into a distillate vaporizer. So they look like this, they look like this. That's a functional pen that you use for inhaling concentrates. It's a THC-specific vaporizer. These are THC-specific vaporizers for your belt or your shoe. They have a little curb in them. That's like eating dessert with your lungs. This is a disposable THC-specific, and I love it. Are concentrates taking over the marijuana market? These are THC-specific vaporizers. That was High Time Magazine's product of the year in 2017. And there's your bubblegum flavored one. So the thing you got to understand about these things is there's no smell with them. Consume, didn't consume. Now edibles, and I have gone 4 minutes over. This is where I'm going to end it. I'll run through the edibles part so we can have conversation. We're skipping the mental health part, and I'm skipping the hopeful part about how to effectively intervene. I wrote a book, and she's selling them as, like, she's subsidizing them. Like, Kim ordered all of these, and you can't get them on Amazon or anything for that. So it's all in there, but here's what you got to understand about edibles, man, and it's different in Pennsylvania right now. But there's so much money to be made in these, it's not going to stay different forever. This is a pack of gummy bears by a company called Edipure. And in Colorado, 10 milligrams of THC is a legal dose. Not because there's science behind that. Most people in the medical community said, well, none is a safe dose. If we have to, we'll say 5 milligrams. But none is the only safe dose. It's because what they agreed on in the committees, because we had 13 months to build all this infrastructure. There's 10 gummy bears in a package. 10 milligrams is a legal dose. Implication is simple. There's 100 milligrams of THC in each one of those gummy bears. Here's my rendition of this back home. I write a whole chapter on this, and I try to, like, it's incredible when a Cannabis Industry Association is like, oh, we can't possibly change the way we're producing it. We'd have to repurpose machines and stuff. You'd have to, oh, you'd have to repurpose a machine? Okay. Because nobody's eating a 10th of gummy bear. And these are the problems. These are the acute issues that people suffer because the way it works, oh, check this out. See that little candy right there? That's a distillate. The distillates are all making their way into edibles now. Because nobody eats without a 100th of a graham cracker. What happens is, okay, so look, if I'm getting high and getting high and getting high and I start to feel a little weird, what do? I stop getting high. I put the blunt down and I step away from the blunt. And I put dark side in and I mellow. If I ingest more than an ear of this gummy bear, and I'm used to getting high quick, this is the problem with edibles. We're used to alcohol hitting us quick, smoke hitting us quick. Because we got to wait for 40 minutes, and then we're like, why am I not feeling anything? Maybe I got the ear without the THC in it, and I ate the rest of it. You can't do anything. There's nothing you can do. Activated charcoal, nope. Inducing vomiting, nope. You can hydrate, and you can give short-term antipsychotics, but that's it. The only thing you can do is ride the ride. And this is where people are getting into trouble in Colorado. And my hat's off to Pennsylvania thus far for not allowing edibles to do anything like this. But they're here. It was funny when I was at the school yesterday, one of the young guys I was talking with was like, everything I buy is Colorado. Everything's come straight from Colorado. Concentrates to edibles to the plant because we're a source state. We're the source state now for it. So here's your lesson, and this is where we're going to end it and go to questions, some of which I hope ask about hopefulness and effective interventions. But if it can be introduced into the human body, it has been commercially produced with THC in it. They have yet to find an exception. And if it's being commercially produced with THC in it, there's a market for it, especially in places that don't have dispensaries. So, coffee, post-tattoo ointment, toothpaste, vaginal suppositories. The staggering variety begs the question, what can't we infuse? Hot sauce, ketchup, barbecue sauce, coffee, K-cup coffee, candy, granola bars, ice cream, nasal mist. This is remarkable and new. This is faster than smoking, or safer than smoking, faster than edible, small and discreet. It's topical THC that affects you psychoactively. That's wild stuff. It's brand new. Use anywhere, anytime. Here's a swallowable pill. Again, a fairly impressive feat. It's got to be activated delta 9. Here's a sucker with 70 milligrams in it. Here's tea. Little candies, little gummies, a happy pill. It looks a lot like a Reese's. That's for real. That's not a joke. That's for real. You see these things going around sometimes. You're like, oh, somebody's messing with you. No, that's actually something called a pot rock. There's the kids' candy with THC in it. There's tarts. Here's THC-infused alcohol. Do you ever come home after a long day at work and feel torn between which substance you want to use to escape reality? This is the obvious, the highest year, everybody had this idea that we're going to replace one with the other. The highest 3 years of alcohol tax revenue Colorado has ever collected have been since we commercialized THC. There's 85 milligrams of sugar and 350 milligrams. Put that into YouTube tonight, Keef Cola. There's a spoiler alert, the kids drinking that, they're all kids, because that doesn't appeal to me, aren't drinking a 35th of the bottle. Anybody keep after rap culture? There's THC syrup. Here's 99% pure THC watermelon flavored drink. Here is THC water. THC chai tea and juice and mints and suckers and Swedish fish and candy bars and cookies and hot cocoa and caramel and the March Madness bracket. Candy bars, liquid THC, 5-hour energy, caffeine plus THC, THC breath spray. And if the THC breath spray is something that works out for you, there's a THC infused lube. And here's your THC infused suppository with 70 milligrams in it, 7 doses. So when I asked the young lady when I bought these how I was supposed to consume 1/7, she was like, come on. I was like, no, seriously, do I put like a 1/7 into my rectum and break it off? Or do I like wait for an hour or two? And she's like, come on. It should be on a documentary that's coming out here. The lady recorded, it's called Potluck. The lady recorded it all. And she's like, no, come on. And I was like, well, seriously, I don't understand how 1/7 of this enters my butt. And she's like, just put the whole thing in. He's like, oh. This is the back of a candy bar I bought another day. There may be health risks associated with the consumption of this product. This product contains marijuana and its potency was tested within an allowable plus or minus of 15% variance. Here's our mental health. Our physical health is in here as well. Here's pregnancy, which is a huge deal in Colorado. And here's some incredibly interesting places to go look for more information. I've gone over, let's have our dialogue time thing. You know, when Kim called, she's a friend of a friend, and when Kim called and said, I know this person and I know and love them too, and she said, I was in Pennsylvania last week for the Pennsylvania DUI Association annual meeting, and flying from Colorado to here is a lot. And I wasn't too crazy about it, and then she told me the format, which was like discuss. Some of the times I wonder why the reason, like I gotta, maybe we're in the place we're at in our country because we aren't having awkward and challenging conversations, and because we're not willing to say, actually I totally disagree with that, I completely disagree with that, I don't know you, but I'm gonna share something from my heart with you. Like I think like this fixes the world when people sit down and talk in a respectful manner. So like I came because of this part. So enjoy and thank you.